Hey guys, hope you're good. It's Chris from Chris Lowe Nutrition here. We're back for episode 4 of the Average to Elite mini-series. So today what we're going to do is extend on last week's where we looked at carbohydrate intake and fueling for maximizing exercise performance. So today we're going to go into the carbohydrate load in preparation for competitions on the weekend. So when I look at the carbohydrate load, or should we say the day prior to a race, event or game, I look at 3 key things. Obviously your carbohydrate intake, your fluid intake and nitrates. So when it comes to carbohydrate loading, the whole idea of this is to make sure we wake up on race day, event day with your carbohydrate stores within the muscle and the liver completely topped up. And in order to do this, we have to eat enough carbohydrates the day before, perhaps 30 to 36 hours before kickoff or the start of a race or event. So when it comes to knowing how much carbohydrates to consume in this day, it's very much dependent on a few different scenarios. First of all, it's very much dependent on what the race or event is the following day. So the type, the duration, and essentially the intensity as well. So again, the longer the duration or higher the intensity, the more carbohydrates you're going to use in that event. So if, for example, like I work with a lot of rugby players, so if someone is coming off the bench and playing 10 minutes, they're not really going to need all 20 carbohydrates to fuel for that performance. However, if they're playing a full 80, therefore they're going to need more carbohydrates the day before to fuel for that. So essentially, it very much depends on what the activity or event or game you got the following day. However, we need to reflect on the previous week and very much look at what's your training load like and what is your carbohydrate or calorie intake like. Generally speaking, if you've had a very high training load or you've had very much a fat loss sort of phase throughout the week where you've been in perhaps a calorie deficit and perhaps reducing carbohydrate intake, we can assume that your starting carbohydrate stores day before game day or race are going to be relatively low. So the idea is then to go for a higher carbohydrate load to make sure we get enough in and we wake up the following day with the carb stores topped up. That being said, if you've had a very easy week, it's been pretty much a chill week of training, perhaps a little bit of a taper, and you haven't been cutting calories to drop body fat or anything, so we can assume that your starting carbohydrate stores are going to be pretty high and therefore need less of a carbohydrate load on that day. So the recommendations for carbohydrate intake on this day is your body weight times 3 to 6. So just for easy maths, if you weigh 100 kilos, that's going to be between 300 and 600 grams of carbohydrates per day, with top end being the depleted kind of state, with the lower end being a very much replenished state at the start of a carbohydrate load. If you're kind of unsure about this, what I always say is go for the top end just to make sure, so you have that sort of reassurance policy there just to make sure that you're not going to run empty. A question I get a lot is, okay, I'm probably going to come off the bench maybe 10-15 minutes, but what happens if someone gets injured and I end up playing 70? If you only fuel for that 10 minutes or prepare for that 10 minutes, you're going to get stuck pretty quickly and your tank is going to run empty and you're going to be flagging towards the end of the game massively. So the whole idea then is to prepare like you're going to play a full 80 minutes, and then if you only get 10, then you just compensate your calories the following day just to pull back, so your calorie intake over perhaps 3 days equals out fine. So we know the day before a game or event or race, your carbohydrate intake is going to be high. So what we want to try and avoid is going really high protein, really high carbohydrates, and really high fat, just because you can have a huge amount of calories on board, you can have a calorie excess, and over the course of the season, this can slowly contribute to body fat gain, which is what we don't need. So the whole idea is to maintain protein intake. We don't need to increase it, we just maintain it throughout the course of the week. Drive up your carbohydrate intake, but we're going to lower your fat down to make sure your calories don't go in too much of an excess. We know that glycogen replenishment is only optimized when you're at calorie maintenance, so we don't want to be in a calorie deficit. Likewise, we don't want to be in a calorie surplus either. So calorie maintenance is what we need to be, and because we've got loads of carbohydrates, we'll just pull down your fat intake slightly just to make sure your calorie budget for the day is adequate. So the second part of your preparation phase is going to be your hydration. So we want to ensure that we wake up the following day in a relatively hydrated state. by all means, you may lose a few hundred grams of water throughout the night through respiration, sweat, or just metabolizing food. But the whole idea is to make sure we have enough fluid throughout the day previously to make sure we are in a better state when we wake up. And what I suggest here is to essentially figure out what your calorie maintenance intake is. And then what we're going to do is times that number by 1.2 to 1.3 for females and 1.3 to 1.4 for males. So say, for example, if you consume 2,500 calories a day to maintain your body weight, you do 2,500 calories times 1.3 to 1.4, and I'll give you your fluid intake for the day. And the idea then is to try and evenly distribute that fluid intake throughout the day also, so you're not playing catch up late at night, and then therefore you need to go to the toilet throughout the night. That's going to affect your sleep. So the whole idea here is just think about drip feeding it throughout the day. And what we've got to appreciate as well, we're probably going to get about anywhere between 10 to 20% of your fluid intake through your food and drinks and coffees and so on. So even if you think if you're having a lot of pasta or a lot of rice or some oats, the water absorbed into those foods, you still count them as well. It doesn't have to solely be water. So the third and final component to the preparation phase is our nitrate intake. So what nitrate does is essentially once you consume foods or products high in nitrate, gets converted to nitrite and nitric oxide within the body. I know that nitric oxide in the body, it dilates your blood vessels, and therefore more blood and therefore more oxygen can be carried out to the working muscles. So what this essentially does is reduces the exercise cost of exercise, and is really, really beneficial for periods of anaerobic conditions. So high intensity based efforts is going to basically help you delay fatigue, and therefore you can carry out more work. To refer to one study where they showed that we had a nice improvement in running performances when they done a 36-hour nitrate load. What they did was trying to get about 29 millimoles, which is about 1,800 milligrams of nitrates in the day before or within the 36 hours prior to this running event. So that probably doesn't make much sense. Like, what does that actually look like? Without getting into too much detail with it, what I want you to really focus on is just try and get as much beetroot or nitrate-based products in the day prior. So this could be beetroot juice for breakfast and having that throughout the day. It could be adding in some sliced chopped beetroot to your spaghetti bolognese at night. It'd be chopping up some beetroot with a salad for lunch or something. So the whole idea is just try and get as many beetroot-based products in the day before. Like, we can extend this into perhaps a 5-day nitrate load, but what I find with this is if you're competing week in, week out, it can get very monotonous and your adherence will drop off quickly, because even if you do like beetroot, you don't be having it every single day just purely for adherence issue. So guys, that's what I look to do when it comes to preparation for a game, event or race. There's 3 components to it: your carbohydrate intake, your fluid intake, and we're looking to get some nitrate-based products in there as well. Next week, I'm going to go into game day nutrition, race day nutrition, and look at the law of halves and how we can taper our food into race day or game to make sure we're firing on all cylinders and we really stay engaged and switched on right until the very end. If you have any questions about this, I'd love to know. Just drop them in the comment section below and I will catch you next week.